This is probably one of the best opportunities in the market right now. This industry will suffer the most out of this big, beautiful bill. But this is exactly what makes it so attractive and presents such an opportunity. Everybody is so focused on the AI. Yes, AI is going to dominate the world because we are trying to integrate AI into everything. Today, we have ChatGPT, we have Grok, and we have a long list of other applications that use AI. Everybody agrees that AI will be integrated into every sector of our life. And NVIDIA, by the way, just crossed a milestone of $4 trillion valuation. So, congratulations to everybody who invested in NVIDIA, especially the early investors. But AI won't be possible without data centers. All across the United States, or even all across the world, companies are pouring billions of dollars to build those data centers that are filled with GPUs that are powering ChatGPT, that are powering any AI bot right now. And if this trend is going to continue, then probably those data centers will fill the world. But here is the interesting thing. These data centers are absolutely useless if they won't be enough energy to power them, because they consume a lot of energy. Right now, as of 2025, it's estimated that they will consume around 415 terawatt hours. And that's a lot of energy. By 2030, it's expected that this number is only going to double. And by 2035 and moving forward, as AI will be integrated much deeper into our society, it will consume far more energy. If you look at the sources of energy in the US, it's mostly natural gas, oil, coal, and renewable energy represents around 13% of total production and the total consumption, which is a tiny percentage. It's not really that tiny of 2 to 3%, but 13% is not even a third of the total energy consumption. And the entire energy system or the electricity system in the US was not actually built for the fact that you will have thousands of data centers across the country that will generate or consume so much energy, which is why the only way to power them is the renewable energy. Because renewable energy, to a certain extent, provides you with infinite amount of energy. Yes, it's expensive to a certain extent. Yes, you have to invest a lot of money to build the infrastructure. But getting energy from solar is literally infinite, or from wind, or even nuclear energy. And that's where the real problem actually starts. Because if you look at what China have been doing all these years, they have been investing in renewable energy more than anyone else. You see, back in 2006, China decided that it is going to become the primary country that will produce batteries and renewable energy. So they passed the renewable energy law. And over the next 2 decades, they invested billions of dollars into this industry. 15 years ago or 10 years ago, most people did not take China seriously. However, the situation is so different right now. Because in 2022, 50% of all the solar panels in the world were produced by China. By 2023, they already invested almost $900 billion into renewable energy. And today, there is literally no comparison. China dominates this industry. They produce pretty much like 80% of all the batteries in the world. They produce most of the solar panels in the world. And when I say most, I don't mean like 30% or 25%. I mean like 60, 70, up to 90% to a certain extent. By 2024, 40% of the entire energy in China have been coming from clean energy. Unlike many other countries, China does not have a lot of oil, neither does it have a lot of natural gas, which means that it is very dependent on other countries such as Middle East and Russia, where it imports most of its energy. So it had a huge incentive to become solar or energy independent, and the only path that was clear in front of them was the renewable energy, which is why they invested so much money into this industry and became pretty much a monopoly in this industry. By 2025, they produce 74% of all the solar panels in the world, wind turbines, and the batteries. If you compare these numbers to the United States, then United States has no chance whatsoever to compete with China. That is why China has a complete monopoly on EVs. When you're actually extracting energy from renewable sources, you have to store it somewhere. So if you got so much energy from solar or the wind, then you have to keep it in batteries so that you can use it later on for other purposes, to charge your car, to charge your house, to charge the factory. And that's why it doesn't matter if you are producing the world's best GPUs and are powering the best chatbots in the world. If you don't have the energy to power all of these data centers, then you cannot possibly compete in the AI race. Yes, United States so far produces far better GPUs by NVIDIA compared to China. But according to the CEO of NVIDIA himself, the gap is narrowing and it's very, very tiny. And probably in 3 to 5 years from now, China will be producing as advanced GPUs as the United States is doing right now. And since they already have an edge or a monopoly on the industry side, it means that they can far better supply their data centers and far exceed the United States when it comes to AI. They have far better chance to be the dominant player in AI because they simply can charge or supply their data centers with far more energy than the United States can possibly do. When the United States realized that they have actually been far behind China, they responded. First of all, in 2008, the United States passed the EV tax credits. If you encourage people to buy EVs by providing them with tax credits, then people will spend their money buying EVs. And if you are an EV company, you're most likely also manufacturing and advancing battery technologies. And if you're advancing battery technologies, then to a certain extent, you're related to the clean energy industry. So it's pretty much a huge chain that by giving incentives for people to buy EVs, you are developing the entire industry. But by 2018, United States realized that it's far behind China and it was forced to impose a 25% tariff on EVs from China. The exact same EV that Tesla is producing and selling for $35,000, $40,000 in the US is being sold in China for $20,000. So if you bring it to the US, there is no comparison. They will beat the competition and China will be, or the Tesla will be out of business in seconds. By 2022, the United States realizes that we have no chance to compete with China. The government of the United States must intervene in this industry and help this industry to compete with China. Otherwise, the United States will be dependent, first of all, on China. And secondly, it won't be able to compete with China on AI, which is whoever controls AI controls the world. United States passes the Inflation Reduction Act. I still have no idea or whatsoever why they called it the Inflation Reduction Act when the main purpose of this act was to help the clean energy sector of the United States by providing huge tax incentives for anybody who produces clean energy. You want to produce solar batteries or solar panels, you have huge tax credits. Wind turbines, huge tax credits. You want to develop the batteries, huge tax credits. But the United States took it one step forward by providing cash-style incentives for companies who produce clean energy. Tesla was literally receiving up to $2.5 billion from the government of the United States by producing batteries. And it wasn't because it was Tesla, but rather Tesla was literally one of the best companies that produced the batteries and also produced clean energy. The government was ready to give corporations billions of dollars if they build clean energy. The point was that we have to incentivize the industry to build the entire infrastructure so that they will be able to produce per unit of energy at such a low cost where the United States will be able to compete with China. And then we will remove all of these incentives. And that's how subsidy is supposed to work in the first place. They took it so far that they imposed 100% tariff on every car that will come from China, since China produces those EVs at a fraction of the price. And these incentives supposed to stay up until 2032 to give the United States the time and the incentive to build that infrastructure to finally be able to compete with China. And that is the problem. Because when Trump passed the Big Beautiful Bill, it was entirely opposite of everything that was done in the last couple of years. It rips off all the incentives for the clean energy. First of all, the government no longer provides cash incentives for the companies who will produce clean energy. So it doesn't matter whether you're producing batteries, clean energy, Teslas, electrical cars. There are no tax incentives. There are no cash from the government of the United States. There is absolutely nothing. You want to build them? Go and build them. You don't want to build them? Don't build them. Secondly, it made it even worse. It started providing incentives for oil and gas and coal. These are the sources of energy of the 20th century. These are the sources of energies that made the richest men in America back in the 20th century because it was the driver of the 20th century. Now, the driver of the 21st century is the renewable energy. So the United States is literally making a U-turn and going backwards instead of challenging China and challenging the world and becoming the dominant power in renewable energy. And we know for a fact that these traditional sources of energy, such as coal and oil and even natural gas, won't be able to power AI. It is literally a gift to China because China was thinking that we've come so far and we dominated the industry. And now the United States will also start subsidizing their industries and they will be able to compete with us. But it seems like it's a gift to China and China will dominate this industry far longer. But here's something that we have to understand is that as long as you understand how this works, you know for a fact that sooner or later the United States will have to do something to compete with China. You can't literally just go and bomb China, right? You have to build your own industries and the government will have to intervene at this point just like it did back in 2022. I mean, that program is supposed to last 10 years, but now it has been interrupted. So within the next 3 to 4 years, when Trump is out of office, now it doesn't matter who will be the next president, Republican, Democrat, they will come with a plan to subsidize this industry to compete with China because this is the industry that will start powering AI. And without AI, you cannot possibly stay the dominant power. And that's why United States will have to act and will have to massively invest in this industry. 3 years from now, China will be far ahead of the United States. Tesla stock is already down because of this big, beautiful bill by 18%, since they will lose a lot of government subsidies. If Tesla will become unprofitable as a result of this, since they ripped them off of the tax incentives, secondly, they ripped them off of the cash-style subsidies that Tesla used to receive because of this Inflation Reduction Act, which means that Tesla can even be kicked out of the S&P 500 for this. That's not a fact. We'll have to wait and see what happens next. But you have plenty of other companies such as First Solar Corporation that produces solar panels in the United States. They're, by the way, one of the largest manufacturers of solar panels. Even if you look at their stock price, you'll see that back in 2022, it was being trading at around $60 a share. The moment the Inflation Reduction Act here was passed, you see that their stock price jumped dramatically up to $250 over here. Investors got excited because they realized how much subsidies this company is going to get out of the government. They started massively buying the stock. However, the stock collapsed after that. Since the moment the stock starts growing, it starts making the mainstream media, the average investor hears about it and he starts buying the stock as well. But it's already too late. The stock is already massively down since then, and it will probably continue going down over the next 2 to 3 years. However, in 3 to 4 years from now, the United States will have to massively subsidize this industry to be able to compete with China. Some of the largest tech companies right now are even investing in building nuclear reactors to be able to take advantage out of the renewable energy to invest in the data centers to be able to power the AI. This should not have happened in the first place, but it happens and it now presents a very unique opportunity. So if you're a smart investor, then you want to take advantage out of it and watch this industry very, very carefully. And if you haven't made your first $100,000 yet in the market, then check out the first link in the description of this video. I have laid a step-by-step plan that you can follow to make your first $100,000. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.